Welcome to Vineyard Milwaukee. Thank you for joining us for worship. Let's pray and enter the Lord's presence with praise. God, we are so blessed to be called your children. Thank you, Lord, for your presence in our lives. Just awaken our hearts this morning to see you and hear you. And it's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. Vida das y amor, traes luz a tinieblas, fuerza das, restauras todo corazón roto. Grande eres Dios. Es tu aliento en mi ser, por eso alabaré, alabaré. Es tu aliento en mi ser, por eso alabaré por siempre. Grande eres Dios. You give light, you are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. Es tu aliento en mi ser, por eso alabaré, alabaré. Es tu aliento en mi ser, por eso alabaré por siempre. All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry. These bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry. These bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. La tierra te adorará, los huesos secos cantarán. Grande los tierra te adorarán, los huesos secos cantarán. Gran eres Dios, es tu aliento en mi ser, por eso alabaré, alabaré, es tu aliento en mi ser, por eso alabaré, por siempre. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise, we pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. Great are you, Lord. Grande eres Dios. You are my safe place when I am weak. You are always near when I'm in need. And all the earth give way, and the mountains fall into the sea. Though my world it quakes, I won't fear. 'Cause you say, be still, know that I am God. Slow down, in me your peace is found. I've got it all. I've got it all in my head. And rivers of joy stream from your fountain, bringing me strength, the peace of your presence. Though the earth give way and the mountains fall into the sea, though my world it quakes, I won't fear. 'Cause you say, be still, know that I am God. Slow down, and be your peace is found. I've got it all. I've got it all in my head. You break the bow and shatter the spear. You're perfect say, be still. Know that I am God. Slow down. Me and peace is found.
Morning, Vineyard Milwaukee, and welcome to our online service this Sunday. For those of you who don't know, we have started meeting in person at Walker Square Park. You bring your own chair and blanket, and depending on the weather, maybe a jacket. And we hang out at the park for a time of corporate worship and teaching and some prayer. So that's at 11 o'clock on Sunday. So if you're just hearing this for the first time, you can actually still make the 11 o'clock and watch this today. Or you could join us next week at Walker Square Park at 11 o'clock on Sunday. Well, today we're continuing our talk about a way forward. And we're one of a few dozen churches that are doing this in our city, this sermon series. And I wonder today if you've ever had experiences where policy, procedure, and like systems have frustrated you. I know that a few years back, I was known to get lots of parking tickets in our city. I don't know what it is with Milwaukee and parking tickets, but they love to, I think they're out to get me. They're just out to get me. They ticket my truck all the time. And what happens is in Milwaukee, if you don't pay those tickets, if you get like 3 of them, they will tow you. And I remember years ago, Ben was still like 2 and I was staying at home and my truck got towed. And at first I thought someone stole it, but then I found out who would want to steal a rusty truck, and it got towed to the tow lot. And as I went to the tow lot to go get my truck out of the tow lot, I obviously brought my 2-year-old with me because he wasn't in school. And I get there and they say, hey, we need your insurance card. And I said, well, that's easy. That's in the truck. And I could see the truck like from the office, like it's like 20 yards away from the building that I was in. And they said, well, you have to go get that. And I go, oh, great. Well, I'll just go out. She goes, no, I have to call a lot vehicle and you'll be escorted into the lot and then you can get your insurance card. And I said, no problem. She said, oh, and you cannot take your child with you in the lot. That's a problem. My child's 2. He's in a stroller. And she said, yeah, you can't, no children can be in the lot. And I said, well, how do you expect me to go get my insurance card if I can't walk there myself? By the way, I can see it. It's right there. I can see it. I could easily just walk over, grab it, and come back. But I can't bring my child, and my child can't get in the lot vehicle. So she said, oh, well, there is another option. You can pay us $20, and we'll have a lot employee will go into your car and retrieve your insurance card. And that way you can pay and get your car released. And I am so frustrated right now because I can see my truck. I can just go and get it myself. But they wouldn't let me do it. And I had to find basically I had to call my insurance company and they had to fax the insurance card over, so I couldn't pay didn't want to pay the $20. It's so frustrating. Sometimes systems can be like life burdening, but sometimes systems can be life-giving. Have you ever benefited from generations before you? Of course you have. We all have, to some extent. I know, like, years ago, we used to use these huge folded sheets of paper, and they were like full of lines, and the paper was like impossible to fold back into its original place. And we used these pieces of paper to find things. It was called a map. It was amazing. But now we use this system that makes things so much easier. It's called GPS. And there's no folding involved. And there's no guessing which route to take and what line goes north, south, east, west. It tells you when to turn. And we have benefited off of that system of technology that has just increased and grown over time. Healthy systems, they produce healthy people. In order for us to stay diligent in doing what is right, we have to understand that we live in a world of systems. The definition of system, a set of principles or procedures according to which something is done. Now, systems have consistent characteristics. There is a desired outcome, there's a target population, there's a policy, a communication strategy, and there are influencers in that system. Like the American dream. It's the desired outcome for everybody. To get their first goal is like graduate from college, land a good paying job, pays really well, and then I can buy that new car and that house and have that wife and family and have the American dream. And you'll do whatever it takes to get it. But this American dream really isn't for everyone. It's not possible for everyone. The system doesn't really help everyone achieve that dream. Does the policies of our country really support everyone making it to the American dream? Well, that first step, the college step for the American dream, is necessary. And actually what's interesting is, like, in 1954 was the first time the Supreme Court actually ruled that racial segregation in schools was unconstitutional. That's just in the 50s. That's not that long ago. In 56, there was this woman named Athrina Lucy. I'm not saying her first name right. We'll call her Miss Lucy. She was the first African American to enroll at the University of Alabama. She enrolled after riots erupted over her enrollment to the college. She was immediately expelled for her own safety. For her own safety, she was expelled. It seems backwards. The system sounds like it didn't work for her. There was this study done by Anthony Carnevale, a research professor at Georgetown and a director of the University Center of Education in the Workplace, the National Center of Education Statistics. They found that in 2017, 41% of white young adults were enrolled in college compared to 36% of Black and Hispanic young adults combined. Additionally, for Americans over 25, 33% of whites had bachelor's degree compared to only 19% Blacks and 16% Hispanics. Much has to do with enrollment processes over the years, and much has to do with the financial burden of college. The study also said, Carnevale also was quoted this. He said this: "We had slavery, Jim Crow, the failure to hand out 40 acres and a mule. We had housing policies, veterans policies, redlining. The new culprit is higher education. It's institutional, just like the Federal Housing Administration policies that didn't allow Black people to buy houses in the suburbs. Colleges in America didn't set out to do this, but in a passive sense, they become the capstone in a system that guarantees racial inequality." The next is landing a job. Hiring practices based upon names. Have you heard some of the stories? People like that would submit two resumes, identical resumes in education and experience, but they just changed the name. Jamal versus John, or Naisha versus Nancy. And John and Nancy typically get the job. Sometimes they even make it where Jamal and Naisha are more qualified than John and Nancy, but yet still, John and Nancy get the interview. Buying a car. not being able and being able to buy the car and then not being able to really drive it. I have a story for you. I used to Uber, and I remember I picked up this one passenger at his home, and he was an African American male, and he was heading to work, and he worked in the suburbs, but he lived in the city, and he had a Ford Mustang, and it was beautiful. It was a parking lot, and I picked him up, and he came out of his apartment, and we were talking, and I'm like, is that your car? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, why am I driving you in my minivan to work? And he goes, well, I have to work all the way in the suburbs, and every time I drive that car, I seem to get pulled over because I guess I don't look like I should be able to afford or have that car. Housing. We've talked about redlining. Even now, there's this push for no low-income housing in our suburb communities. Racism is like part of the system we live in. Racism is so American. When someone protests it, people think that they're protesting America. Our system is broken, from slavery to Jim Crow to mass incarceration to wealth gaps. The golden image of the American dream is not possible for everyone. Today, I actually want to talk about another empire that was in a golden age at one time. It was the empire of Babylon. It was ruled by a king named Nebuchadnezzar. The law was based on this sort of eye for eye system. Nebuchadnezzar was a military man, stretched the borders from the Persian Gulf to Egypt. He was known for his policy of deportation, mostly Jews. He was really big into developing building and reconstruction programs. He also liked to build walls. He used religion as a key role to his reign of power. He created all these sort of religious chapels and shrines to him all throughout his land, and he lavished the attention. He had 3 major beautiful palaces with big gates on them. He ruled by oppressing. In Daniel 3, we pick up the story. It says this: King Nebuchadnezzar made an image of gold, 60 cubits high and 6 cubits wide, and set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. He then summoned the satraps, prefects, governors, advisors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, and all the other provincial officials to come to dedication of the image he had set up. So the provincial officials assembled for the dedication of the image that the king Nebuchadnezzar had set up, and they stood before it. So basically what he did was he called his princesses, governors, judges, lawyers, police, bankers, and his media specialists, his media team, to basically tweet out, everyone get here because I've got something that I want to say about this massive statue that I've made. We continue on in Daniel 3, 4 through 6. He says this. The story goes like this. Then the herald loudly proclaimed, nations and peoples of every language, this is what you are commanded to do. As soon as you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipe, and all kinds of music, you must fall down and worship the image of gold that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. Whoever does not fall down and worship will immediately be thrown into a blazing furnace. You see, for a system like this to work, it must be accepted and reinforced by powers in society. And if you're part of the powers of society, you'll do whatever it takes to maintain your Babylonian dream. Then comes these 3 guys. It just doesn't fit. Daniel goes on. Now when you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipe, and all kinds of music, if you are ready to fall down and worship the image I made, very good. But if you do not worship it, you will be thrown immediately into a blazing furnace. Then what God will be able to rescue you from my hand? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to him, King Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it. and he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. But even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up. These three guys have watched their friends be deported, their neighbors, their neighborhoods taken over, their houses of worship destroyed. They have been oppressed. They've seen their jobs being limited. They have really no hope in the Babylonian dream. They have no place in the system. Rather than fall in line to this oppressed system, the policies of bowing down, they rise. They rise. In 2 Corinthians 10, chapter 10, verse 4, it says this: the weapons we fight with are not the weapons of the world. On the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds. Not only do they tell the king that God will save us, but he also says, even if he doesn't, they refuse to bend. They refuse to bend. If you've never heard the story before, the king actually winds up putting them in the fiery furnace. And he gets so angry and mad at them, he increases the heat by 7 times hotter than he normally would. And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are just hanging out in the furnace, literally unfazed by the heat, walking around having a conversation. And the king checks the furnace, and he actually sees that there's one more person in there. There's a 4th man in the furnace, untouched. And he lets them out, and he says this. He says, "Praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has set an angel and rescued his servants." That is so cool. But then he says this. He says, I'll cut into pieces anyone and turn their house into rubble if they say anything bad about the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He clearly would have benefited to live a little bit longer, maybe hear a little bit about, Jesus and some of the stuff he was saying. But there's this system, and it got shattered, it got broken, and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they didn't bow to it. They didn't bend to it. They stepped in. But there also is this system that can be life-giving. In 1 Corinthians 12, 14 through 20, it says this: "Yes, the body has many different parts, not just one part. If the foot says, 'I am not a part of the body because I am not a hand,' that does not make it any less a part of the body. And if the ear says, 'I am not a part of the body because I am not an eye,' would that make it any less part of the body? If the whole body were an eye, how would you hear? Or if the whole body were an ear, how would you smell anything? But our bodies have many parts, and God has put each part just where he wants it. How strange a body would be if it had only one part. Yes, there are many parts, but only one body." You see, the church should be a system, an example of a system that gives life. It's our hope that Vineyard Milwaukee Church is a system that, one, shows that people are valued by God, that there's a connection that happens, and that people can grow, and that we become a supportive community. Everyone gets to play here at Vineyard Milwaukee. We're all uniquely gifted to participate in accomplishing a God-given purpose. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, their purpose was to confront a king head on and walk into a furnace. That was like their lane that they were running on. And we all have unique lanes, all unique gifting and talents. What's yours? Truth is, many don't actually know what they've been created to do. They swerve into other lanes, someone else's lane or something that they like to, and they get burned out. These 3 guys, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, survived the fire because they knew who they were and their purpose, and they wouldn't bow down to the broken system. So many of you out there are teachers, artists, writers, CEOs, small business owners, public speakers, filmmakers, musicians, nurses, doctors, social workers, moms and dads. How are you using your lane in this unjust system that we are currently living in? How are you letting God speak to your purpose? This week, what I want to do is I want to invite you first to spend some time looking inward and discover what your lane is, what your gifts are, what your talents are. Then, what I want to encourage you to do is ask God how He wants you to rise in this unjust system that's created a divide between our white, black, brown, and native people. And how do I step into that in my city? Bless you guys. Go be the church.